Paying their fair share, tax the rich to lower inflation? The president and some members of Congress say Americans will experience less inflationary pressure if only taxes are raised on the top wage earners, millionaires and billionaires. So what's the truth? Here to set us straight is Dr. Michael Busler, public policy analyst and professor of finance at New Jersey's Stockton University. Dr. Busler, it's always good to talk with you. So this idea of raising taxes on the wealthy is nothing new, but what's the truth here?
Well, and thanks for having me. As you know, it's my pleasure to be here. That's exactly wrong. And if you raise the taxes on the wealthy, not only won't you reduce inflation, you'll actually make it worse. Now, why do I say that? Because they have less money to save and invest. That's less capital going into capital markets. We already have a capital shortage because the federal government is $31.5 trillion in debt. But if it leads to a capital shortage, that makes inflation worse.
Let's talk about baby formula shortages. That's a big issue. Other supply chain issues. Is this just a temporary crisis in your opinion, or is it the new norm for America?
Well, the baby shortage problem should have never happened. The FDA had a problem with Abbott Labs production facility back in February. And here it is May, and it's not reopened yet. So obviously that's going to create a shortage. The FDA, if there is a problem, look, we like the FDA to do their job, but let's fix it as quickly as possible. They didn't do that. We have a shortage. Now we have to go to Europe and ask them for some of theirs. They'll give some. It won't be enough to alleviate the shortage. It'll help a little bit, but it won't alleviate the shortage. Government has got to learn to be more efficient. They have a function to serve, and they're supposed to protect us, and we understand that. However, if there's a problem, it's got to be fixed within warp speed time and not dragging the supply chain out as long as it has. We have other supply chain issues, mostly due to the transportation problem in the U.S. Truck drivers and warehouses are filling up with goods that we can't deliver. We need to encourage business to make more, not add more regulations to business, not raise the corporate income tax from 21 to 28%. All of those things will tend to reduce supply and make the supply chain problems worse.
So do you think a recession is coming? How bad will it be?
I'll tell you, there's virtually a 0% chance we can avoid recession. Why do I say that? And this is all brought on by government, fiscal, and monetary policy. The Federal Reserve's goals are supposed to be price stability, keep inflation low, full employment, keep unemployment low, and growth in the economy. For the last year or so, they've abandoned those goals in favor of social goals, trying to cure real or perceived social injustices, and worried about climate change. Clearly, we had a problem the beginning of 2021. The Federal Reserve should have stopped their bond buying program and stopped keeping interest rates near zero. And shockingly, they waited until March of this year to start raising interest rates. Even though they went up a quarter and then a half a point, they're still near zero, or at least 1%. That low interest rate encourages excess demand in the economy. Now, why do I say that? So look at the housing market. I said, look, builders build 100 houses, put up a sign, $200,000, 150 people show up. Why are there so many people showing up? Because people said last year, I can get a mortgage at 2.5%, and the federal government in the last 2 years handed out free money to everybody. So now I have enough money for the down payment. I wasn't going to buy a house, but this is the best time to do it. So hundreds of thousands of people went into the housing market, and housing prices went up 15-20% a year. Same thing with cars. All of that excess demand led to car prices going sky high. And when the new car prices went sky high, the used car prices went up right after that. So the Federal Reserve waited too long. Now they're going to have to get extremely aggressive. They're going to, in my view, they're going to raise the interest rates at least 0.5% in June, at least 0.5% in July, and probably another 0.5% 4 or 5 times for the rest of the year. That will be too late to reduce the inflation problem. We're running inflation about 8.5% now. Come the summer, we're looking at a 10% inflation rate, mostly because we're about to have a crisis with food. Farmers are telling me how much money they're spending for fertilizer and diesel fuel, which is killing them, and they can't get labor, so they have to raise wages to get more people to work. So the cost to produce is going sky high for them. As a result, they're going to have to recover that in the price. Adding to that, Russia invaded Ukraine. About 25% of the world's wheat supply is made over there. We're going to end up with a shortage of food. The U.S. will complain, hey, we're paying so much more for food. Where it's really going to hurt is the less than developed countries who can't pay more for the food, and we could run into some large starvation issues. So we're looking at high inflation for the rest of this year. And if the Federal Reserve gets very aggressive with interest rates and the economy starts to stagnate, and remember the first quarter of this year, we already had negative GDP growth. If the economy starts to stagnate, we end up with a condition we haven't seen since the Carter years called stagflation, which a year ago I said that's likely to happen if the Federal Reserve doesn't act quickly. I'm worried about not just a recession, but also a recession and keeping inflation high. And that's a stagflation problem, which is extremely difficult to solve.
Well, buckle your belts. We may be in for a long haul here, for a tough one. Dr. Michael Busler, thank you for setting us straight with those insights today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary. My pleasure. Look forward to doing it again.